Greetings. The purpose of this screencast is to give us a quick overview of Google Forms. And we can access Google Forms in a couple of different ways. We can land on our Waffle or Apps Launcher and launch Forms straight from here. We can go to the New button, and if we don't see Forms immediately in our drop-down menu, we can click on More and land on Google Forms that way. Once we're in our form, our best practice is always to go ahead and name it. So I'm going to come over here and click on that, and I'm going to call it Practice Form. And when I let go or click over here, that title will be zipped down into the Google form itself. That's part of the naming protocol. And just so that we understand, a Google form can be used either as a survey or a quiz. When it's used as a survey, it will ask a series of questions, and the answers that are gathered are used for informational purposes only. When a Google form is used as a quiz, the answers to those questions are given a point value. So we're going to model a Google survey first. So I've got my practice form, and I can include a description of what this is going to cover. So I can type any sort of description for my form right here. Then I'm always given one blank question, and that question will always start off in the multiple choice format. If I wanted a different type of question, I would come over here and click on this drop-down menu, and we can see all the different types of questions we can ask using a Google form. I'm just going to start with some simple multiple choice question. My first question is going to be, then I have to input my multiple choice options. And so I've got chocolate. I can come down here and I can add vanilla. I can add strawberry. I can keep adding as many as I want. And if I want to have that ever popular other option, it's blue right here, and I just click on Add Other. If I decide I don't like one of my answers, I can come over here and hit the X, and that answer choice will be removed. And if I wanted to add a picture with my answer, or instead of the words, I can add and upload an image. From within the question, I can do a few other things. If I like the base of my question, I can actually hit the duplicate button, and I'll get the exact same question another time. If I don't like a question at all, if I thought that was a mistake, I can hit the trash can and it'll delete the entire question. If I want to make sure that my user answers this question, that I don't want them to skip it, I'll hit the required button. I'll toggle that on. I can also come to my three dots, my peas in a pod or my snowman. That's always the more information. And I have a few other options based on my form as a whole. We're going to skip this for now. So I've got my one multiple choice question, and now I want to add another question. I'm going to come to this floating menu bar, and I've got quite a few options right here. I'm going to go to the plus sign, and I am adding another question. We'll quickly model the different types of questions. So we started with multiple choice, but we can absolutely have short answer. In a short answer question, we truly want a short answer, and this is often where we ask people to put in their name, and then they would write their name right here. And again, we can copy it, we can delete it, we can require it, and we can have more. Adding another type of question, and this time I want it to be a paragraph or a longer answer. And so maybe I will add something like describe your summer. And so this will give my user slightly more space to write their answer. One thing I want to point out is over here when we're using short answer or long answer, our three dots give us what's called response validation. And when we click on that, we see that we can have some requirements for that response. So I can ask for the length to be a minimum character count, or I can set a maximum character count. Maybe I want them to have at least 100 words, or characters, I should say. And if they don't have that much, the error message So if they only have 98 characters, it won't let them submit it. It'll give them the error message that they need to write more. And that's for our short answer and our long answer text. We have a few other types of questions, so I'm going to click the plus button, and we can add what's called the checkbox style. And so this is where they can select from a variety of choices. And I can give them many options. So the thing to keep in mind is that when you have multiple choice, our users get to select one answer, and when we have checkboxes, they can select more than one answer. And again, I have copy, delete, require, and I have my more options. Let's look and see what else we have. So my next type is the drop-down menu. A drop-down question is kind of like a multiple choice question, but it often has longer response choices. So in this example, I'm going to write which statement best describes you? And my options are going to be more than one word long. So I would have longer sentences or options than maybe my multiple choice. And then my user would pick one of these to best describe them. So a drop-down menu is not that different from multiple choice. So the next in the list, and it kind of is in a section by itself if we notice that, is called file upload. And this is when you have a survey that asks you, the user, to attach a file. So it's not me, the creator, giving someone a picture or a file. It's when I say upload a file to give to me. So in file upload, it'll give these directions right away, and then you hit continue, and you give them the direction about what file to upload. So upload your photo. Let's look at our next one. We have linear scale, multiple choice grid, and checkbox grid, and these are all sort of in a section together. So let's start with linear scale. And this is often when we ask a respondent to rank something. How comfortable do you feel 1 to 5? And then we would have a 1 or a 0, and we could change this to any number. So 1 would be not comfortable, and 5 would be expert. And so our viewer would decide where they were on that scale. Then our next one is going to be the multiple choice grid. So a multiple choice grid question has two different bits of information that it's gathering. And I think maybe once I start showing it, it'll make a little bit more sense. So my question is going to be, what Google apps do you want to learn more about? That's my question. And over here, I'm going to list the different apps. So I've got Docs, Slides, Forms, Sheets, and I want them to respond to each of these. So I want the answers to be yes and no. So do you want to learn more about Google Docs? Yes or no. Do you want to learn more about Google Sheets? Yes or no. So I'll see these as my rows, and I'll end up with 2 columns, and that's where people will click yes or no. And I can require a response for each of them. And this time, we're going to land on the checkbox grid. In our multiple choice grid, we could only answer one or the other. A checkbox grid would let someone respond in both columns. So maybe our question is something like, what can you bring to each of the parties? So our rows might name the parties. And then what are the choices? Can you bring napkins? Can you bring plates? Can you bring dessert? So they might be able to bring everything to the birthday party, but nothing to the holiday party. And again, you can require a response or not. We can also ask for the date and time to be selected. So that's a quick overview of all the different question types. And I'm going to come up here for a moment and put it in what's called preview mode. And this will show us what our viewer will be seeing. We have our multiple choice, our short answer, and our long answer. Select all our favorite fruits in the checkbox. This is what a drop-down menu looks like. Upload your photos just asks them to add a file. We could have added some more directions if we wanted to. Here's that rate our comfort level, and we see our two end descriptors, and then they would select where they fall. Here's our multiple choice grid where they select one in each column, and the checkbox where they could select more than one in each column, and our date stamp we put in there twice. So that actually, when we went to preview, I don't know if you noticed, it opened up a second window. So I have my preview version, and then I have my editing version here. So we've talked about this plus button, but we have a bunch of other options as well. So at any point, I can add a new original question, but maybe I've created another Google form and I want to pull in some questions that I used in a different Google form. So if I've already created one, I can grab that form and select which questions I want to copy. Another thing we can do is we can add a section to our survey that just has text to it, that's not attached to a specific question or response, and that's our double T's right here. And maybe this is going to be additional information. So we could give a little bit more information so that they know that they'll need that to answer the next group of questions. We can also at any point add an image, add a YouTube video or a video. And then these two bars right here, this is how we would divide our survey into different sections. And what that means for our viewer is that they would first see whatever is right here in section 1, this one question. Then at the bottom of their page, they'll have the next button before they go into section 2. So it limits what our viewer is seeing on the screen at any given time. And we can get a little bit fancier by saying which section they go to. So those are some of our choices in setting up our Google form. Now I'm going to bring you back up here to this menu. We have some add-ons, and that looks like this right here. This is how we would customize what the background looks like in our font choices. This is the preview button again. This is what our viewer sees. And so we've broken it into sections so they would, they need to answer the question to get to the next section. That's what that looks like. I'm going to skip the gear for just a minute, and I'm going to come over here to our 3 dots. So we can undo things, we can move it to the trash, and I want to point out the print button because sometimes that's really important. If we need to see a printed version of our form, it does print kind of big, but that's how we would get to it. So we can absolutely print out a form. And this is how we add collaborators or share a Google form. And that's really important because our button up here says send, not share. So we can add collaborators and we would type in their names or give them a link and they can help us on the form. When we hit the send button, this is how we send the form to the people to respond to it. We can type in their emails, we can get a link, we can embed it. So oftentimes in schools, what we do is we get the link and put it in Google Classroom or in an email. We can have a subject and we can write a message to them. We can also add collaborators through this button. It's right here at the bottom. Let's go to the gears now. So the gears or the settings is all of that information about the survey, and this is where we choose to make it a quiz. So we have our general information. Do we want to collect email addresses? That helps us know who's filled out the form. Do we want to give our respondent a receipt like you filled it out? If we're using it educationally, we probably want it to just be in users in Alameda Unified School District. If we're sending it to parents, we wouldn't check this. Do we want people to fill it out more than once or just one time? Can they edit afterwards? So this is where we set our settings for either a quiz or a form. Presentation mode is, what does the viewer see? Do we want to see that there's a progress bar? Do we want to shuffle the questions? So that is what our viewer sees, and then a confirmation message when they're done. And if we want to turn this into a quiz, we hit quiz and we need to toggle on make it a quiz. If students are using managed, meaning AUSD issued Chromebooks, that's the only device it'll work on, you can turn on locked mode, which means they can't have another tab open, but that only works on Chromebooks. And do you want to release their grades right away, or do you want to wait until maybe everyone is done? And do you want the students, the respondents, to see what they missed, etc.? So I'm going to turn this on as a quiz. And now we're going to come back to our questions, and I'm going to point out that we have a new option down here at the bottom. Since it's a quiz, we need to have an answer key and a point value for every single question. So we're going to hit answer key, and one of the things we're going to do is we're going to select the right answer, and we're going to say how many points that is worth. And if we want to give them answer feedback for incorrect or correct answers, like great choice, that would be the feedback they would get for the right answer. And if they clicked the wrong answer, we could give them answer feedback for that. We can also, as we see, enable 2 possible correct choices. So meaning you would accept either answer. And then we're done, and we're going to move on, and we can sort of do that for any one of these. We can select answer key, decide how many points it's worth, and we can select which is the answer, or in some of them, if we're allowed to have multiple answers as well. So now that we've created our quiz and I have sent it out through a link to an imaginary student, and they have responded to us. So I can see up here that I have 1 response now that someone's filled out my survey or quiz, and I can see that information sort of 3 different ways. A summary view, which kind of, if we had multiple people, it would combine their information 1 question at a time. I can look at the information question by question. So what did everyone say was their favorite flavor of ice cream? Or I can look at it 1 person at a time and see how that person responded to each question. So again, summary combines everyone's responses. Question will show you how everyone responded to any given question, and we would select the question right here. An individual, this is how we would see how each person responded. So now I've got my quiz or my survey, and it's accepting responses, and people can keep adding. But sometimes we want to say, that's enough, nobody else can respond. And I can turn that off, meaning they can't respond to the quiz or survey. I can turn it back on. And then the last thing I'm going to point out is we do have our More button. And part of that, or next to it, is a Google form, whether a survey or a quiz, can be attached or linked or dump the information into a Google Sheet. And we just click on that, we hit create. We could actually have attached it to an existing sheet. And now all of those questions become the column headers, and the responses are filled in underneath. So I only had 1 person, LMS student, respond to my quiz, But if I had multiple people responded, I would see all of their names down here, and then I would see everyone's answers. And once it's in a Google Sheet, we can manipulate that information a little bit more.